Welcome to the Comfort via Discomfort podcast. My name is Adam Beaumier, and I am so happy and grateful that you're here with me right now. Embracing discomfort has literally saved my life, and it's now my mission through this podcast to help others around the world lean into discomfort and vulnerability so that they can live their best life. What up, what up? Welcome to episode 16 of the CVD podcast. Super happy to bring you this one. It's with my friend, Sierra Parr. I met Sierra back in 2018, actually, when I was doing my year of discomfort. One of our mutual friends introduced us because Sierra was hosting a podcast at the time. It was called Part of the Process and has since been rebranded to the Lemon Soul Studios. I've got my Lemon Soul shirt on right now, rocking it. Absolutely love the message, love the brand, everything about it. And Sierra is a weird and wonderful person. I was on her podcast back in 2018, and I had the pleasure of hosting her on my podcast back in June of this year. I was my wife and I were in Windsor, Ontario, visiting my parents and my family. It was the first time that I had been back there in a year and a half. And it was an incredible weekend. And it was the perfect opportunity to meet up with Sierra, to catch up with her, to see what she's been up to, and to also have her on her podcast, or have her on my podcast, to talk about real life, because Sierra is one of the most authentic people that I know. And she shares the real moments online, which not a lot of people do, right? Social media tends to be, a highlight reel. Well, Sierra likes to show the highlight reel-esque moments, but also the moments when, she eats a whole bag of chips to herself at one night rather than going to the gym, or rather than doing a project, for example. Or, if she has a super rad pop-up event coming up and it gets canceled for whatever reason, she shares the details. Why? Because she thinks it's super, super important. And we talk about that in this episode. She explains her point of view on social media and how, when you see somebody post a picture, it's literally like a millisecond in time. And as soon as that person snaps that picture, the next moment they could be completely miserable. And so she thinks it is part of her responsibility to share her authentic life online. Obviously, it's not for everybody. And she also talks about the responsibility as a consumer of social media and the importance of recognizing that those photos are milliseconds of time of a person's life. And so we can't obviously judge an entire person just based on the milliseconds that they share online. So anyways, Sierra's weird. She's wonderful. In this episode, she talks about going from feeling like an outcast and feeling left out as a kid to really stepping into her weird and wonderful self and becoming her own superhero in a way, which is super empowering and super awesome. You guys are going to love this episode because Sierra is so down to earth. She's so real. She's so raw. When I asked her for a piece of advice, she's like, well, some of the, I don't like to be an advice giver. I just like to put a message out there. And you know what? If it lands with the right person at the right time through the right medium, like this podcast, then, it's meant to be. But, when I say something, when I give advice, you either take it or leave it. That's totally up to you. And so she shares a lot of really interesting perspectives, a lot of interesting things that some of them I didn't even know that she dealt with behind the scenes. So I hope you're ready, because this is another amazing episode. Here we go.
Ready? All right, let's do it.
Ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're back on another episode of the Comfort via Discomfort podcast. And this is my first in-person one. I'm super excited for it. My wife and I did film one together in person, but outside of that, this is the first in-person one. So I'm super excited.
I'm so glad to be your first.
Yeah. Awkward right off the gate. Okay, right out the gate. Awesome.
Now your viewers know what to expect.
So I'm here with my friend Sierra Parr. Really excited to be here. And why don't we I was driving over here and I was like, I haven't seen you in over 3 years. Like, it was literally New Year's Eve of 2019 the last time we saw each other. It's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I feel like everyone's like time schedule because of the world shut down is like backwards and off limits. And then you're like, oh, three entire years. Yeah, 3 entire years was a long time ago. But then like you show up here, I'm like, it was like you were here yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the sign of a good friendship.
Yes, 100%. And I mean, I've had, though, like, it's been happening all weekend because, I mean, obviously don't live here, been in town since like Thursday night, and it's just all been like going to hang out with old friends and stuff like that. Some people I'm like, haven't seen you in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, like family members and stuff too. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. Like,
well, I said that to your sister when she came to visit. I was like, how long has it been since you've even seen Adam?
Yeah, like even her, well, I mean, they came to visit me and Shelby in Boston in March, I think. Yeah. But before that, it was like 15 months. Like Alice, like almost doubled in size. I swear to God.
She's the cutest thing I've ever seen in my whole life.
Yeah,
I just love her.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to get into this. And you said that this is your first podcast in how long?
Those noises. Does that give you an accurate depiction of how long it's been? Yeah, probably. Oh gosh, in person, probably 2 years. Like in person, wow. Because even the last podcasts that I've done, like over the pandemic, were all virtual. They were all over Zoom. Yeah. So like in person, like, yeah, if I'm awkward, that's why.
Yeah. So that was the awkward joke at the beginning. That's why that happened. Anyways, cool. So yeah, I'm super excited to get into this because, like I said before we got started here, like I admire you a lot because of your authenticity. You are 100% you, and you're 100% yourself online, which is super important. And we're going to talk about this for like an hour. So super excited to get into it. But why don't we get started with little introductions? So tell people who you are as a human being. The reason I asked that is because so often we're like, what do you do? Yeah. And it's like, okay, that's work, that's separate. Like, I want to know who you are as a person. So who is Sierra Parr?
Sierra Parr is, oh man, a tree hugger, a vintage lover, board game enthusiast. Nice. Big heart, big weirdo. Big heart, bigger weirdo, probably. That's probably where the authenticity comes from, is that I just, you grow up thinking, weird is bad. Oh, that's so weird. Someone ever tells me I'm weird, I'm like, thank you. Thanks.
You're different.
Changing that. Like,
thank you.
Thank you. Changing that narrative, right? But no, who am I as a person? Yeah, you're right. I want to be like, well, I run this brand and I do this.
Go right into that.
You want to go directly there. I'm like, you're right. Like, I'm a person out. It's so weird to think that I'm a person outside of that. But Lemon Soul, as my work, indirectly is a lot of who I am. And I think, like you're saying, like the authenticity part, I'm like, my brand is just me living my life. Obviously the highlight reel comes into it as much as we try not to, but yeah, tree hugger, vintage lover, board game enthusiast. What else did I say?
I think those were the 4 things.
I already nailed it. Nailed it.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Cat mom. Sorry.
Cat mom. Yes, you have 2. I'm still waiting for them to come out.
They'll come down eventually.
Yeah. Chaos and Kodak.
Yep. Yeah. My babies. I won't be that person that's like, these are my children. Do you want to see them?
I mean, I do want to see them, of course. But
eventually.
Yes.
But yeah, that's me.
Yeah. So that's you as a person. And I mean, obviously you touched on Lemon Soul. I got my Lemon Soul t-shirt on. You got yours on. So tell me a little bit about Lemon Soul, about the Labyrinth podcast, all of it.
All of it. Okay.
Let's go.
Lemon Soul kind of started, everyone has a personal Instagram. And then a friend of mine, Megan Martin, I just saw she was sharing quotes, positive messages. She was just sharing them on her stories. And I was like, man, this girl's page makes me feel so good. Like, it's just like such good reminders, like little stuff all day long. And I was like, I want to also do that. And so I tell her all the time, she was like the catalyst of like what Lemon Soul became, because she gave me what I now get to give to other people.
That's really interesting.
And it's just like, I just wanted it to be like, make people feel good. Like, there's so much shit going on in the world. There's so much stuff that like can be out of our control. That's like, I just want a space where like, you can come to my page. You're not going to see a news article. You're not going to see any of that. It's just like
COVID.
Exactly. None of it. None of it.
It's literally just like, hi, I'm a human being.
Yes, exactly. It's just like a good place to be like, here's a little positive message, and not like toxic positivity, like the realness. Like, it's also,
We'll get into that later.
Okay.
We'll get into that
Okay. Getting ahead of myself. But yeah, so then lemon soul, the idea came from like when life hands you lemons, make lemonade, right? And so I was like, I want to do something positive. Yellow is obviously associated with that kind of thing. Lemon soul kind of just became, from a word board of like, what are all the things that are yellow? And then lemon, what makes lemonade, blah, blah, blah. And it's just about embracing the fact that there's sour in life. Like everyone's got adversities, everyone's got struggles, everyone's gonna have shit experiences, and like that's okay. Like that's part of life. Like not everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows, and it's like taking the sour with the sweet, essentially, and like knowing that whatever has hindered you, in life, like it's okay. Like we can use that and like make something sweet from it. So that's kind of where the lemon soul idea came from.
Yeah. And I absolutely love that message because it's so true. Like there's always going to be sour. And even if there's like you're on a great run and like nothing bad has happened, like it's not going to be that way forever. Like eventually there will be adversity, there will be challenges, and you have to learn how to deal with it.
Exactly. And it's like chasing happiness isn't like, I think we were grown up taught to like happiness is the ultimate goal, which I'm like,
and destination.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, like happiness is an emotion. Absolutely. But like to be at happiness or that be your goal, like all the time is so unrealistic.
That's like chasing perfection.
Exactly. Which I mean, happiness exists, but like perfection, not so much, but it is. It's like, you just have to be content with like the in-between, like finding peace, whether it's low, medium, high, like knowing that it's all helpful. There's a part of it that's like every step of the process is helpful. And actually Lemon Soul was originally called, were you on the podcast? Were you on the podcast at that time?
Yes, it was called Part of the Process.
Part of the Process.
Yeah.
So my last name is Parr. So there was a pun there because we love puns because I'm a dad.
But yeah, I was on the podcast in 2018 because that's when I started the Comfort via Discomfort stuff. And again, it wasn't even meant to be like a brand or anything. It literally personal need. And I needed to get outside my comfort zone and learn how to deal with stress because I had no idea how to do it, and turned into like this personal brand. And people were like, this is dope. I'm like, wait, people are relating to this? Okay. And that was the thing. I was literally being like an authentic human online, like, hey, here's what I've experienced. Here's what I've learned. And people were like, there were some people that sent me messages and completely opened up like within a week. And I was like, I haven't talked to you in 5 years.
Isn't it amazing though?
It was so cool.
Yeah.
Super, super cool. And it was Kirsten.
Yes.
Yes. It was Kirsten because I went to school with her and
Did I not know this?
You didn't know this?
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, Kirsten and I went to the University of Windsor together.
I don't think I knew this. Okay, wow. Oh my God,
so we went to the University of Windsor together from 2014 to 2016.
No shit.
I think she was there
sense.
The whole time
as
well. Yeah. And so eventually when I was doing this, I think she had recommended to you
probably
for me to be on the podcast or something like that.
I don't remember. I'm getting real old. My memory is not that great.
Yeah.
anymore.
So I was on your podcast back then, and it was part of the process.
Part of the process.
And when did it change to Lemon Soul?
August of 4 years ago, because we're coming up on 4. Math's
so
also
August
not that great.
August 2018. It was after I was on.
It probably was. You were probably the first 5 episodes of the podcast.
I think I was number 5.
So you were probably the last one like that I intro, like, welcome to Part of the Podcast. Part of the Process. That would have been great too.
Yeah.
And then I switched over to Lemon Soul for like marketing purposes, right? Like Part of the Process at the time just felt really like the
rigid.
word process. It is really very rigid. And I was like, this isn't fun.
Yeah.
So then I rebranded. Yeah.
Lemon Soul, so much fun.
So much fun.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
So good.
My niece, my 6-year-old niece, Alice, loves it. She visited you what, was it yesterday? Yeah.
Yesterday. Yeah.
So my sister and her husband are in from Toronto for the weekend. So literally like my mom was so excited for this weekend because she was like, I have all of my children in my house for the first time in so long, and we can actually go do stuff.
That's so nice.
She was super excited, and my niece Alice is obviously here, and like she was like, I need to go show Sierra. I have a thrift find. I need to show her. She's got like this navy blue like sweater that says Lemon Soul on it.
When she walked, so she they came to pick up product from like my place of work is where I do pickups for Labyrinth, and which is a little vintage shop for people that don't know. But she came in and like stood in the doorway at work and like she was so proud, and it was the cutest thing on earth. And I thought she made the shirt, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then she's like, no, I thrifted it. Like I found it. I was like, oh my God, this is a thing outside of me, which was like so I've never seen that ever. And so then your sister did like a deep dive on like the brand and where it's from. It's from someplace in Europe. It was just cool. like a their brand isn't Lemon Soul. It was just kind of like their season, I don't know, like the summer thing that they did in like 2019. And there was like a run of like Lemon Soul stuff, and I was like, wow. Yeah. It was so darn cute. So cute.
That is amazing.
Hitting the demographics of all ages.
Yeah. And she was she was super happy about it. And you quickly touch on Labyrinth. So I just want to say, so on Instagram, your Lemon Soul Studios is like your
the mainstay.
Personal page. Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
Personal page and like podcasting page.
Yep.
And then Lemon Soul Labyrinth.
Yes. What a tongue twister that one is. Say that 10 times fast.
I probably could, but I don't want to waste time. Maybe. I don't know.
Lemon Soul Labyrinth, short form, The Labyrinth, is something I started in the pandemic, essentially as an online vintage shop or secondhand, thrifted, all the good stuff. But it's a very curated page of like very much my aesthetic, very much my style. Like I'm not just selling anything I find. It's very particular, but it's been a lot of fun. That's been particular. Very particular.
Now I'm getting in the puns. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So you've got this, you've got two, they're kind of the same brand, but they're very different. Like that one's podcast, one's vintage, but they're both like 100% you, which is super cool. And I mean, like you literally get to like live like through yourself, like live like yourself through these brands every single day,
which
is super cool.
It's a business plan that like, so Lemon Soul Studios, when I used that, like that's my Instagram handle. I was like, okay, but I can, because I changed my mind a lot. I used to say that I get bored really fast. Now I say I'm just a very curious person.
There you go.
Changing that narrative.
Nice.
So when I did Lemon Soul Studios, I'm like, no matter if I don't do the podcast forever, which clearly I have not, I can run whatever I want through the Lemon Soul brand.
Else on.
Yes.
So Lemon Soul Labyrinth, Lemon Soul.
Yes. So it's like they're all just like little, eventually whatever the next thing is, because I'm sure there will be something. It's just like an extension of Lemon Soul.
Yeah.
So like building the brand, and then like whatever crazy idea I have, every couple of years I change my mind on what I want to do. I'm like, all right, we just attach it to Lemon Soul, and like keep changing. Because we're not in an age where you have to fucking work the same job for 40 years.
Yay. I'm so happy about that. Yeah. And I mean, making changes, like even going, I hadn't thought of this really before, but like the fact that you were part of the process for 5 episodes and then you're like, I need to change. Like sometimes people look at that and they're like, oh my God, like this is the biggest decision of my life. Like people are going to hate me for change. It's like, shut up. It's fine. Like literally. And I was watching, I've gotten in a lot more into like Yes Theory lately, the brand, right? And on their homepage, literally they changed their stuff like 4 times in the process, in like a 2-year time period, because like they evolved and they were like, this doesn't fit. I want to change. I want this to have more meaning, or I want it, whatever it is. Yeah. Right. So
I feel like that gets in the way of a lot of people just starting anything, myself included.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, well, it's not perfect. Like, I'm not really sure. I'm like, just fucking do the thing. You can change it in a few weeks. You can, and you're gonna change a few weeks, a few months, a few years, adapt, evolve. But like, it doesn't have to be perfect right off the fucking bat. But again, I only learned that from like being that person. So
100%. I was going to say, I feel like you could go on like a little rant here. Like I could put down the microphone and just give you like 10 minutes of time here. Awesome. So I'm literally like, this is my first time like in this space, like this Lemon Soul Labyrinth. There is stuff everywhere.
Yeah. We're a maximalist home.
Maximalist
okay,
home.
Like minimalist.
Yeah.
The reverse is maximalist.
See, it's really interesting because I'm definitely in that like minimalist style. Yeah. Like I don't need stuff. Like I'm very much like, I'm very minimalistic, very simple.
Very minimalistic.
And so even my wife and I live in an apartment in Boston. We have like 900 square feet. So we have limited space and we don't want to be there for long term. We want to move around and stuff like that. And so anytime it's like, let's get more stuff. I'm like, like Christmas, I'm like, my mom and dad, like one of they're gift givers. And so I'm like, guys, I literally do not want physical things.
And you got to travel with them home. You got to take them home.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm very minimalistic, but like being in here, even though you are this maximalist,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like overwhelming. Like it.
That's good. I'm glad.
And there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of purpose behind it. So maybe that's why.
Yeah. You know what's
because
funny?
you don't have a warehouse. It's literally just this.
This is my home, my inventory. You haven't even seen the storage room. The room over there, I'll show it to you afterwards. It's just like jam packed to the brim of inventory.
Yeah.
But truthfully, like the minimalist thing is what I wanted. When it became trendy, when the documentary came out, I watched it. I was like, this is cool. Like, I want minimal. I don't need stuff. I don't need the things, blah, blah, blah. And while looking around, it may not seem that way, but I don't keep anything that doesn't feel like important to me. And art is a huge part of my life. And when I realized that, I was like, I don't need to be minimalist. Like, I love my art. Like, this stuff makes me very happy.
Yeah.
But if when it doesn't, because I also get bored real fast, then I just sell it on Labyrinth.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing of like having a business of vintage.
Exactly.
My whole home is vintage. Like all of this stuff you see, maybe like 2% of it is not thrifted. I'm looking around, I'm like, except maybe this couch is like thrifted or secondhand or from an antique store, from a vintage store. And the beautiful thing is that if I find a piece that I love, I'll enjoy it for a few weeks, few months. And then when it doesn't mean anything to me anymore, I can find it a new home.
I love that.
Like then someone else gets to love it. That's what I love about like the
and
the
I
reusing.
love like because like your little, I don't know if you call it a tagline or anything, but like lemon love, like
lemon love.
All of these things are secondhand. They have some lemon love.
Lemon love. Yeah.
And that's awesome. I love that. It's really cool.
Thanks.
And we could totally get off topic with this minimalistic thing because So anyways, what I wanted to get into is like I'm in this space. Like you've got branded magnets and business cards and t-shirts and 2 brands online and everything, but this obviously isn't where it started. You weren't always like super confident to be like 100% yourself online and be vulnerable that way. So I'm like super pumped to get into like how this happened. Like how did you go from, before to now? Like how did you get to the point where you're like, I can be weird and wonderful online and I am okay if people don't like it?
Ooh, yeah, we're going to go deep. We're going to get deep. Yeah, and that's like the whole point, right? That's the whole point of this podcast. And the whole point of Lemon Soul is like, it's a mental health space. And I have talked, it's been 4 years to talk about a lot of things. But I think like most of us, a lot of us get to a point in life where things are really dark and really scary and you might not want to be on the planet anymore. Mm-hmm. And I got to that point. I listened to your episode and I was just on the other end like, I'm so proud. Like, that's hard to do. Yeah. It's very hard to do. But sometimes you gotta just say fuck it and it's going to help someone else. And that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And I remember being at like my darkest moment and like the darkest part being like, I don't want anyone else to ever feel this way. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of what stemmed, part of the process is as it began, but Lemon Soul was just this feeling of like, I don't want anyone else to ever feel so alone that they don't want to be here anymore. And if I can brighten someone's day for a brief moment, or if I can give them a piece of advice where they look at something maybe a little differently, maybe it's just even that day, like that's important to me.
Yeah,
like,
that's amazing.
That's the best part is just like, yeah, everything I post might not be for everyone. Maybe you like this post, but not that post. That's fine. But it's like the one DM you get or the one message that you get or the one comment that you get that was like, oh, I really needed this today. Like, that's it. Like, that's the whole point. Nailed it.
High five, because we didn't do that at the beginning to sync up the sound.
So now you're going to have to match it to our mouth.
Or that clap.
There we go. Smart.
Exactly. So I wanted to give you a high five, but also like, bam, need to sync this.
We did it.
So this is awesome. Like mental health space. You wanted to say a little bit more?
I was just, I'm like, wait, what was the original question? Because I know I start like rambling on things. Like how I kind of got to be comfortable with being vulnerable online. I'm still not.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Dope.
That is
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Because like I don't know. I've definitely felt this. I know a lot of other people feel like I need to like puff up my chest and like say a certain thing or act a certain way online. And like I'm going to get to a place where I'm totally comfortable doing this all the time.
Yeah.
Like, right? Yeah. Almost like that. Happiness is the destination type of perfection is the
comfort being uncomfortable on the internet. Oh, I just used your little thing.
There you go.
Yeah, would that be the goal? Sure, but is that realistic? No. I'm a human being. It's hard to share shit when you're crying. It's hard to share shit when you're alone on a Friday night and you're eating McDonald's in your underwear and watching TV, and you've done that for 6 weeks in a row. Like, it's hard to post those things. But then again, when you receive the message of being like, wow, this is like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, I'm doing this too. Like, you understand that it's so much far beyond you. Mm-hmm. It's like, post it and ghost it. That's what I like say to myself.
Ooh, tell me more.
Like, I think about the thing like, oh, I'm going to share this thing where like, because there's a fine line on the internet of people that view it are like, oh, she's just looking for attention, which I have never received that personally, but I'm sure people have said, that happens. I've thought about it, right?
Put it out into the world.
Yeah. So there's a fine line of like, how much vulnerability do you share? How much of the, I'm not even going to call it sad, but just like real life do you share for people to be like, this is too much. She shares too much and it's too depressing. Like, you have to kind of find the balance of like, it's too much. I mean, that's like a whole other like personal thing about being too much, but it is post it and ghost it is about like, I think I know what I want to post. I'm like, okay. Sometimes I post it and I'm like, oh God, I got to take this down. 3 hours goes and you're like, who's looked at it? And you're like scrolling on the stories to be like, who's looked at it? Who knows, whatever thing I posted that day.
Do you have an example?
Oh gosh.
I know I'm throwing you right on the spot here, but like, I'm really interested in terms of like, what is that content where you're like posting it and you're like, fuck, I need to take it.
Take it down?
Yeah.
And I haven't done one in a while, but it was probably a year ago, 2 years ago. I was sitting in my car, having a shitty day. And I was literally like, I'm like this in my car and I'm like filming myself being like, I'm just having a really fucking shitty day and I don't want to fucking be here. And I'm just like verb spewing, right? Just complaining essentially, or like, but wanting to show people that like, but this is just like real life and it's fine. Mm-hmm. But then you don't want people to hop on. Then I like post it and I'm like, was that really sad? Was that too much? Like, are people going to judge me because I'm like filming myself being sad? So how sad can she really be?
Is she staging this sadness type of? Yeah,
okay. Exactly. Okay. So then you're kind of like, what are people thinking? What are people thinking? What are people thinking?
Yeah, been there for sure.
Who's looking at it? People that know you in real life versus people that don't know you in real life. It's just a hard balance in your brain of being like, this is going to help someone, which it did, which I got plenty of messages that day about like, I also feel like this sometimes. I'm like, yeah, we fucking all do.
We're humans.
You just don't see it online.
Exactly. Yes.
You just don't see it.
And I love that you share this stuff because that's the whole thing. Like, and I mean, part of this podcast is like, everybody shares success online. They share the good highlight reel, whatever moments. And like even LinkedIn we were talking about is just like, I got a new certification. I got a new job. I'm moving to, it's like, cool. But like, does anybody post about anybody else? Or like, even like, hey, I got fired from my job because whatever. Or, hey, I left this toxic work environment. Like nobody like shares this real stuff. And so like, this podcast is, how did you get to where you are? Like really, how did you get, like what's going on behind the scenes? What shit did you go through? And like the fact that you post like real life online is super inspiring. And like, there are so many posts where I can't relate to all of them, of course. But like there are parts of it where I'm just like, oh, sending you a huge virtual hug. Yeah. Like this is, and a lot of the time, like I'll watch even some of your stories or the posts and I won't always send you a message, but a lot of times I'm like, thank you. Like just thank you for sharing something like this because it's real and people need to see it because again, like this is around the whole idea of like normalizing these things is you can't normalize it if we don't talk about it, if we don't record it, if we don't put it out in the open. Yeah. And it's an active process. Like it's not something that's just like, hey, I'm just going to post that day. It's like, oh, I know I've posted a little bit of a highlight reel lately. Like I can logically look back. If you look at my page right now, it still kind of looks like a highlight reel. If you read the captions, you'll probably get a little more context. Yep. But if you look at my, my grid on Instagram, it still looks like a highlight reel. Mm-hmm. So then I have to like, again, I usually do it through captions, is like getting a little deeper. Some of my favorite posts that I've done have been like, here are the 6 things I failed at this month. And then like inviting other people to be like, what have you lost? What have you struggled with lately? And then those are the posts that I get the most comments on. Yeah. People are like, thank you. Let me just tell you what I fucked up on this week. And I'm like, sick. Same. Yeah. But like, no, a lot of spaces don't invite that. Yeah. But when you get other people involved, like there's so much freedom in like failing collectively where like failure, we could go on a whole rant about failure because like I don't love failing. Who loves failing? But like we're taught
that getting an F on a piece of paper is like the worst fucking thing in school.
Yeah.
How dare we fail? How dare we not know every fucking thing we were taught?
Yeah.
And I think the education system needs like a real wake up call
I know,
on
right?
like giving letter grades, and that's a whole
yeah. Let's just redo the whole thing, right? No, seriously. I've had many conversations about this recently as well, because like it's an old system where when the only thing was I need an education to get a job, like exactly like step 1, step 2.
Yeah, very linear.
It was a very like efficient process.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, it's not like that. Like you said at the start, like we can do whatever we want.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be a 40-year career.
No.
There are so many things that we could get into.
I know, we could just talk
have
forever.
a limited time. Yeah. My goodness.
But
let me see. I do definitely want to like get into like where your sort of darkest moment, like what that was. What did that actually look like?
Yep.
I did have another question in my head, but I totally
You'll think about it. That's okay. We can start there.
Yeah, let's start there. I want you to take me back to like when that moment was, like, and take me through like what you were feeling, like what was going on in your life.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? What was like the behind the scenes of that darkest moment, so that, you know, people can actually understand what that was like and can probably relate to it. Yeah.
So I moved to Toronto. I was in university for 2 years here in Windsor. And then I was like, fuck it. I want to go to the city. Truth be told, it was because I had a breakup and I was like, I don't want to be anywhere near him. I'm going to go to a new city. So I'm going to change my entire life path. And then went to school in Toronto.
How crazy is that decision, right? Do you ever look back at that and be like, what the fuck?
Yes.
Like, I could have totally stayed here and never seen this person.
Yeah. And it really wasn't that big of a deal. Like, it was just kind of like one of those, it was like a nice, convenient excuse. I also didn't like what I was doing in school. I started in English. I fucking hate reading. Love to write, hate to read. So then I jumped to communication theory. Film is great, but I like wanted my hands on it. So then I moved to Toronto to do film.
And what year was that?
That would have been my 3rd year of university. I moved to, oh gosh. It was 10 years ago.
I'm like, what year was it? You're like 3rd year. I'm like,
no.
Not helpful for context.
Oh my gosh. It would have been, I graduated high school 2010.
2013, 14?
2014?
Yeah.
Man, that's a long ass time ago. That's
hey,
so
my
weird.
darkest moment was 2013.
So we're around the same cusp.
Cool.
So moved to the city. I liked it for about 2 weeks, and then I really hated it, and I wanted to move back home. I stayed the year there for school. My mom came and visited me, if not twice a month, at least once a month, because I was having a really hard time being up there. Obviously, you see me now, very bubbly, very outgoing, with all the stuff that I do. In Toronto, I was a very like quiet, like if you saw me in class, like I was a very shy, quiet, reserved, like went to class, did my thing, and then went back home. Like I didn't want to socialize. I was scared of being in the city. Eventually I ironically found a group of friends that were from Windsor.
Cool.
They lived in a different apartment building that I got really close with them. So there was some comfort there, but I still moved home at the end of it. And honestly, the biggest thing was moving home and nothing was the same. My friend group wasn't the same. Okay. I came back expecting in high school, like a friend and I like kind of like organized all the girls, a guy friend of mine organized all the guys, and we would go and do stuff all the time. And then I came back and, you know, everyone's in school and has lives. And I wanted like this camaraderie back of like this friend group that I loved so dearly. And like the year that I was gone in school, I had made like an hour video like of our 2012 experience. Like anywhere we went, I was filming. And so like I put together this like these people, like the only art in my bedroom in Toronto was like 2 Bristol boards of all these photos of all my friends. And again, this isn't like, I'm actually still really close with all these friends. So it's not like I lost all these friends. It's just that it was different. Yeah. It was different. I came home. I didn't feel like I had the life that I left beforehand. And I feel like I fucked it up.
And that's exactly what you were looking for.
Yeah. I wanted to come back and it'd be back to normal and life go back to the way it was. And I came home and felt really, really alone. I have always been the single friend. I've dated intermittently, but like that friend group that I went to high school with, everyone like paired up. Like everyone was kind of dating each other and I was just like me. So it was really hard seeing like everyone like hang out with their couples. And I was just like, what do I do now? So it really was like a kind of like just a shock of coming back and life being like, LOL, you're not in high school anymore. Like it's just not the same.
Yeah.
and it kind of spiraled from there. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to go back to school for. I was home from Toronto. My life had kind of flipped upside down. I like felt like I failed.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, were you ever scared of like, oh, I'm moving, like I made the big move to the city, and now I'm coming back. Everybody's gonna think I'm a failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like, why? You have to answer all the questions of like, oh, like what are you doing now? And I'm like,
which is so fucked up. Like the fact that like going to Toronto, oh, you're successful, and then coming back, you're like, you failed.
Yeah,
you
which
suck.
is right. Which is actually no one said that to me. You know what I mean? It's here.
100% in your head.
It's here.
Yeah.
And so when I moved back and didn't really, it was just, which again, I think a lot of 20-year-olds go through that. I was in my 20s at the time. Like, you feel like you have this whole pressure. I also grew up in a family business, so there was a lot of pull for me to go work for the family business, which I didn't want to do, which I've now been doing for almost 10 years. And really, what do I go back to school for?
Mm-hmm.
And like, if I don't go to school, I'm going to be stuck at the family business forever. And it was just like all of the things all at once. And I was like, I don't want to do any of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here at all.
Yeah.
And like, you just like, again, I'm not trying to minimize my own experience, but like, I feel like a lot of people go through those scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of what kickstarted my experience of depression and anxiety. And I will say outwardly, I have never been diagnosed with depression. I have never been diagnosed with anxiety. I use those terms loosely for myself, knowing that my doctor did want to put me on antidepressants. And I've always said, no, we're not going to go into that topic. That's just a personal choice for me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a lifestyle change, which is what I did, and really learned about myself. And again, that's a whole process in of itself over 10 years. But I went back to school for film. Didn't know anyone.
Within like what time?
So I moved home from Toronto.
2014, 2015?
Gosh, probably 2015.
Okay.
That's a loose number.
Yeah, that's fine.
I was in school for a year in Toronto, moved back home. So yeah, call it 2015-ish maybe, in April. Then I was like, the next year of school wouldn't have started till September. So I was kind of like working part-time, kind of shooting photography. Did I want to do that? I don't know. Was I any good? I don't know. How do I price myself? I don't know. Do I go back to school? And then I did. I went back in September. For the year prior, when I was home in Windsor, I was doing film theory. When I went back after my year in Toronto, I was doing film in advanced communication, which was like hands-on, like actually making film at the university.
Cool.
At the university. Again, didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
I went
when
back,
you leave and come back, it's weird.
And I
had that. Yeah, I did the same thing. I was gone for 2 years, came back, and I was like, I've never even considered going to the University of Windsor. I don't even know where the fuck this place is.
Yep. And I'm like, what do I do? And like, I'm not in a year. I was older than everyone that was in their first year, right? So like,
yeah, same.
I didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
And then I finished my degree. I was there 2 more years to finish my degree.
Okay.
And then I kind of did like little jobs on set and stuff here and there. And then like my last year, I was like, fuck it, I'm making my own film. And I like did the biggest project of my life. And like we had a cast and crew of like 30 people in this house, actually, is where we shot it.
That was this house?
That was this house.
Is this
for
like
tape.
Collapsia?
Tape. Collapsia is the other house.
Gotcha.
But tape was the first one in this house, which is so weird to like sit here and say that.
Is that one like publicly available?
Yes. Yeah. Tape is.
Where's the link?
Yeah, well,
you need to send it to me.
Get the link so you can watch it. You can sit in the house and watch it. Yeah, and it was kind of just like my balls to the wall, like, I'm going to fucking do this. And I remember my professor at the time, who I love to death, but at the time he was like, Sierra, that's like a really big undertaking. The ideas that I wanted to make it rain indoors. I wanted to hang someone from a tree. I had all these really like grand ideas, and I had never done them over the course of like all these intermittent experiences through like different
and all
sets.
These like little theories and stuff. You're just like, hey, now I want to go do.
Yeah, and I was like, now I want to do it. And he was like, you haven't really ever directed or ever written. And I was like, yeah, but I can do it. And like,
that's
like
dope.
Made it I feel like anytime someone challenges me to not do something, I'm like, oh, I'm going to prove to you that I can.
Interesting.
And like balls to wall, my dad, like this house was decrepit and full of like rat shit and like really gross to be inside. There was no running water. There was no heat. We filmed in the middle of winter. It was very, very cold. And like that room over there, we had it rain indoors. And then my dad built like me and my dad rigged the ceiling with a hose, and I like stabbed holes in it. But there was no running water here, so we had to bring buckets of water over like the week before.
Fucking commitment.
And then the water froze because it was cold because there's no heat in the house.
Wow.
So then my dad had this like heating element, but then as soon as the water went through, it was cold. It was ice cold. And then we had like a bloodbath in that room over there.
Oh my goodness.
It was a whole thing. It was a very intense experience. But I think that really gave me the confidence to do like a lot of other shit.
Cool.
A lot of other shit was like, for whatever reason, that was my balls to the wall moment of like, I'm a creative person. I can do this. I'm tired of being like on the sidelines of the person who's like the
you want to see
assistant.
what you can actually
I'm like,
do.
no, I want to be like the boss.
Yeah.
I want to be the boss.
I want to be the boss, and you're like, I'm jumping into it. Like, this is me. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. Let's see what I can do.
Yeah, and that whole premise of that film was suicide awareness. It was suicide prevention.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a very non-linear story about essentially a character who's in purgatory and reliving the same day over and over again, and like experiencing his different levels of depression.
I think I've seen the trailer. I think I might have seen the trailer for this, but I haven't seen that. You need to send me this.
Yeah,
yes,
I'll send it to you.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm sharing this everywhere.
Yeah.
That's
it was
amazing.
like 20 minutes long, or 18 minutes and 20 seconds.
Oh my goodness, you know the exact time.
I only
That's
know
awesome.
that because like I submitted to a bunch of film festivals, and my professor was like, you need to cut it down to like 10 minutes or 15 minutes because of like time slots for festivals. They want to fit in 10-minute movie, like three 10-minute movies for a 30-minute showing. At 18 minutes, that's like such a weird cutoff. So I did end up getting into some film festivals, but not as many as I hoped. So I look back and then I'm like, sometimes I'm laying in bed. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that here. That's really weird.
That's weird, but fucking amazing.
Yeah, it is.
That's
really
amazing.
Full circle. Really
that
full
is
circle.
So cool.
Yeah.
That like that was the moment that was so huge for you, and you're now like, this is where I live. Like this. Do you ever think about that? Like in a sense of like, is there ever a time where you're like feeling down or not motivated to do anything, and then you think back to that moment in this house, and you're like, fuck yeah, I can do stuff. Fuck yeah, I'm an awesome human. I can totally do stuff.
Yes, I can.
Do you ever have moments like that?
Yes, I have those moments. Not necessarily going back to that moment. I actually go back to a moment of being like, I just wanted to like, if I'm ever down and like I had full day yesterday. Had a full day of plans yesterday. I didn't do shit all. I laid in bed all day yesterday. Had a real down day yesterday.
Thank you for saying this again.
Of course.
Authenticity.
Yeah,
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Laid in bed all day. It was very sad, but we're great.
But that's totally
But that's
fine.
it. But that's real life. But like that happens to people all the fucking time. It's just life. And I just remember being like, a couple of years ago, you would have killed to be living in a space where you could just be sad and sitting on the couch all day. Like, I don't have to feel bad that I'm not doing anything today. Mm-hmm. Like, I would have 3 years ago, I would have been like, I just want to like be by myself in my home and like eating good snacks and watching TV. Well, guess what, Sierra? You get to do that today.
Yeah, and nobody will come bother you.
Exactly. I'm like, there's always a silver lining. There's always a silver lining.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, when you say that, what pops in my head, I listened to this podcast recently. It's the podcast is called The Diary of a CEO. It's this guy named Stephen Bartlett. He lives in the UK. He's like 29, 30-year-old like billionaire CEO or millionaire CEO, and he interviews a bunch of different people, and one of them was Matthew Hussey.
Hussey, I knew you were going to say Hussey. I love him.
Yeah, he's dope. And so Matthew Hussey is like, and you fill me like add anything if I miss anything, but he's kind of like this. He's a best-selling author. He's like a relationship expert kind of dude. And on the episode, he suffers from this like crazy pain in his ear or something that was like debilitating.
That.
Yeah. So I'm going to send you the link to this podcast because it's dope. And he was saying that he used to like completely fight it all the time. And what it used to do is like honestly put him in this like stress response all the time. And he was literally fighting himself, like telling himself that he was like not doing good enough because he was not accepting his pain. And he's like, then I got to a point in my life where I kind of had to, and he shifted his perspective, and he's very much like, when the pain is a 9 out of 10, like, okay, I guess I'm going to be in pain today. And just literally welcoming the pain instead of like trying to shove it out of the back door. Because like the pain is going to be there regardless. And you get to decide like how you respond to it and your perspective on it. And he said like that was a huge like changing moment for him. So like when you were talking about your experience, I was like,
yeah, that is on a whole other level. This is going to be a whole switch in topic, but we don't have to go down that road. But like something I don't talk about on Lemon Soul, it's like probably one portion of my life that isn't on the internet. I have maybe touched on it a few times over the 4 years. But like I've been sick like my whole life. And like I have a bone disease called Ribbing's disease, which causes a lot of bone pain. I just got diagnosed with POTS, which is posterior orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I had heart surgery when I was 16. All of these things that I don't talk about online. Wow. And he was saying like how like the pain was trying like push it. Yeah. And I'm like, this is a huge part of my life that Holy shit. No one really knows about.
Yeah.
And I choose that way, for a good reason. But like, it's an acceptance of like not getting comfortable like physically with that pain, but like recognizing that it's okay that it's there and like doing what you can to take care of yourself, knowing when you can push yourself, knowing when you need to take a back seat.
Yeah.
And like, finding that like fine line of kind of being like the stress response is kind of what when you said like he had like the stress response to it is like my body with the POTS, like my nervous system's kind of all fucked up. The stress response is either fight or flight.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm constantly in flight, like constantly like on the go, like constantly like wanting to escape. And my body, I'll get like adrenaline surges and then I crash. But understanding that and like getting comfortable with that pain the same way I got comfortable with like my mental pain, I am now like at this age experiencing like my acceptance of the physical portion of my life.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. There's we just hope.
Oh my God.
Their kids have worms.
Yeah. Seriously. Wow. I never knew that about you. And like you said, there aren't, how many, like your family knows, and that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, family knows. Like my close friends know, because there are days where I'm like, I just can't do the thing today. I can't get to the event today, or like I've never really been someone who drinks. But again, I've never been able to party because my body just cannot withstand that. I have heat intolerance, so like I love the summer. Who doesn't love the summer? My body, on the other hand, wants to die. And there's just quite like there's a lot, quite literally. There's a whole part of my life that I don't share, mostly because I don't need unsolicited advice. That's like the biggest thing. On the times that I have shared little portions of what that part of my life looks like, there is the unsolicited advice of, and again, it's with good intention. I've been this way since I was young. I've seen every doctor. I've seen every specialist. I just am very familiar with my body at this point.
I'm an expert on my body and what's going on in it. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't have that desire. But then the other side of it is just with what I deal with, there's a fear of that people don't believe me. And that's the greatest thing, is that my own family didn't believe me for a long period of time.
Really?
Because you see me like this.
Yeah.
You get to see me when I'm having a good day. In 2 hours from now, I could have a trigger and I'm like extremely in pain and I'm crying in the bathtub. Like, it's so, I've now learned my triggers. Like, I kind of can tell what I shouldn't eat, can eat, the heat thing. There's a lot of different things. But there's a big fear of that. Like, you're lying. Like, we get to see you for 10 seconds on Instagram stories. You're perfectly fine and bubbly. I'm like, I can also turn that on if I wanted to.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's another side of it, right?
When you're feeling like, even when you're feeling shitty, you can turn on that smile for 10 seconds.
Yeah. Hey guys, how's your day going? Great. I hope you have a great Monday. And then you turn the phone, you're like, motherfucker.
Yeah. And we've all seen those videos.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
Holy
shit.
Yeah,
there's whole other realm.
You totally opened up a new can of worms. But like, what's really, there's a couple things that I wanted to touch on. Yeah. You had said, and I mean, there's so many things to talk about.
Sorry, but I just ended up going on a rant.
No, this is totally fine, because I mean, again, like, this is really cool because there's so much that happens behind the scenes that you just don't know about. And so it just reiterates that message, like, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge people for what you see online, because there are an endless number of things that are happening behind the scenes. Good, bad, you can put labels on them if you want, but they are other things that you don't get to see online, which is really, really interesting. So like, everybody's got their shit.
Everyone's
got their shit.
Everyone's got their shit. And that's why I say, like, I want to shift the narrative of using social media is like, it's not about what you're posting. It's about how I'm viewing it and how I'm looking at your post. We need to shift the focus to be like, Instagram isn't about what the person who's posting it. It's about the person that's receiving it. And if you are aware enough to be like, this isn't their real life. This is one portion. Like, we have to remember what you're looking at is a millisecond picture. Like, that picture is a fucking millisecond of a moment. And like, you don't know what that person is going through outside of that millisecond.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, wow, she's in a bikini on the beach and she looks great. Her life must be perfect. Like, no, you need to be aware enough as a consumer of content to know that's not real life.
Yeah.
But it's just programmed in a way that you just accept everything that you look at as at face value.
Yeah.
And I so like try and switch the narrative to be like, be conscious of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And don't just like assume about everything you see online. Like, you have to just look at social media with like, take everything with a grain of salt. Like, that's a very small portion
100%.
of everyone's lives.
100%.
Even mine, who's like authentic.
Yeah.
You still only see a snippet.
Yeah, like you literally can't even Gary Vee can't share every second of every day.
Exactly.
Even though he's like,
there's a huge portion, of Gary Vee we probably don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm super happy that you said that, because you made a post about that, about like the millisecond thing, right?
Yes.
And I was like, ooh, I love this. And I've never thought about it exactly like that, but you put it in such good perspective, because literally I snap a picture, quite literally, it's like a millisecond or whatever of time. And literally like 10 seconds after, I could be on the floor crying.
Exactly.
10 seconds later.
Yep.
But I'm like, ooh, picture with my new podcast microphone, picture with my new kitten, picture with me and my very happy wife. The next day, the next 10 seconds, we could be fighting.
Exactly.
Not that that's me and Shelby, but like just as an example, right?
Hypothetically.
Like, yeah, that's that. And when I read that post, I was like, I love this perspective. And it's still going to be, a process of like reminding myself of that regularly. I'm going to put it like on a sticky note on my forehead or something, or like the background of my phone. Yeah. That would be a good idea.
You should. Yeah.
Because I think that's super important, and it's totally a different perspective of like, as consumers, realize what you are looking at.
But we don't go to school to learn that shit. I think so. And we're going to go back to the school thing, but like, we're not taught how to look at advertising. We're not taught how to look at marketing. I went to school for that shit, so I do. Like, when I was doing a lot of my theory courses were all based on like how advertising works, how marketing works. And again, you went through business school, so I'm sure you had those courses as well. Yeah. But I think it should be taught to kids in grade school, especially with how prevalent like models and celebrities are on social media, access even, their friends who might have Facetune or whatever those apps are. Like, there's
never even heard of that app.
Change your body, change your face, put makeup on you when you don't have it on you, like all those things, right? And again, going back to like the millisecond, my picture like this, snap, 1 millisecond later, I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
This is what I really look like. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
There's so much built into the one picture we see on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then there's like 10,000 other things that could be.
Yeah.
I'm still guilty of it. I still post the pictures that I think they'll look the best. But like, and that's okay too. That's the other, like, the weird hard part of it is like, it's also okay if your page is just a highlight reel.
Yeah.
You're not a fraud because you're not posting authentically.
Right.
It's hard. Not everyone needs to, has to, wants to. That's also fine. If you only want to post like your very best photos, girl, you go right ahead. It's my job to determine how I feel about that.
Ooh, I like that. I like that you're like giving yourself that accountability.
You
100%.
have to.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone should, but we take everything at face value. Like,
of course we do.
She's got 10 beautiful photos. That must be what she looks like all the time.
Yeah.
No, let's think about this logically. I know she don't look like that 10 times out of 10. That's life.
Yeah.
But she looks amazing.
Yeah, right.
And that's also fine.
Yeah. Wow. Super interesting. And I love the shift in perspective for sure. And so I've got like 3 things in my head that I'm like,
yes,
I want to touch on. I know we don't have probably not enough time to go through all of them. So I'm going to throw all 3 out there.
Okay, let's do it.
And we're going to see what happens.
I'll try to spitball.
The 2 of them are connected because you were saying that you had to become comfortable with your physical pain, and you also had to become comfortable with your mental pain, which was really, really interesting. The other thing that I really want to get into is, you talked about with the filming, how that was the first time where you were like, wow, I can really be myself. I'm full out, ready to jump in type of thing. But I want to understand more about, how did you feel when you were in Toronto, for example, or in your darkest moment? How did it feel to not feel like you could be authentic? What was that like? And how did you go from that to I'm my weird, wonderful self, and I don't give a fuck if you don't like it. You can go follow another page. I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah,
and that's totally
okay.
fine. That's Did you hear what I just said?
That's totally fine.
I tried to say that's totally fine.
Oh, fine.
Or that's totally okay.
I love it.
Totally fine.
Totally fine.
Put that on a coaster. So, anyways,
but yeah, when you feel like you're the weird person or a different person than what is norm or what is ordinary, it feels very scary. I feel like, again, a lot of people go through that where they're like, I'm not the standard, whether that's looks, whether it's personality, whether that's your interests. And it feels like no one understands you. I remember feeling like, here's another honest truth, I still feel that way. I still feel deeply misunderstood. And I felt like that in my elder teens into my early 20s. And it's a really scary place to be because who do you talk to? Yeah. Who do you...
That's what I was going to say. You don't feel like you can connect to anybody, so you don't reach out or you don't post anything because you're like, nobody's going to fucking understand this.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't really have someone in my life that was like me.
Yeah, my parents aren't going to get it. My friends are moving on to different things.
Right. I just... And again, it comes with having this creative portion of my life where... and again, it's not a bad thing. I always hate that it sounds like it's a bad thing that I'm saying oh, I'm not ordinary or normal. It's not. It's just different.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have anyone that I felt like I could look up to and be like, okay, but it is going to be okay. Or oh, I do want to be like this person.
Sorry to jump in here. Is this okay. This type of thing where if you can't see it, you can't be it type of thing?
Yeah.
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 This,
it doesn't exist. How can I live? How can I be myself if I don't know that it exists?
And how can I have, I don't have a role model who I don't see a person that is going through something like this or sharing something like this.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to relate to anybody.
Yeah.
And that can go for obviously the mental health struggles and representation in terms of equity in films and all types of advertising and stuff like that. So, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
To be honest, I couldn't tell you. There was not really a moment of switch. I think after my really depressive period, going back to school, again, still not knowing anyone, but meeting people who were creative, I felt more comfortable to be myself. And eventually I remember saying to myself, you have to be your own catalyst. Yeah. If there's not someone to look up to, you have to be that person. And I did.
Yeah.
And it comes over time, right? Yeah, that's not a switch where things change. But the big moment for me was listening to a podcast, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do a podcast.
Really? Cool.
In time. I remember hearing someone say, oh, I really wasted a lot of time in my 20s worrying. And now they were 30 or 35. And I actually heard it on 2 different podcasts.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, why do people keep saying this? I don't want to fucking waste my 20s.
Yeah.
Why am I worrying? And it just, any podcast, person talking, seeing a post on Instagram, it just takes one person to say, it could be the same thing you've heard 12 times, but you hear it at the right moment in the right tone of voice, and you're just like, fuck.
Yeah, 100%. So that's why you started a podcast, was because you wanted to reach one person.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's so interesting.
Just need to the one thing.
This is the same reason I started mine, because I wanted to reach one person that was going through the same shit that I was going through in 2013, because at that time, if I had maybe heard the right thing at the right time, maybe things would have been different.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of things over time to make that actually come to fruition. But you're like, fuck, why am I worrying?
Yeah.
Like, let me not be the person that like hears someone older being like, I wish I didn't do this thing, and me being like, like, whatever. But instead of being like, okay, let me take that advice. I'm not going to fucking waste my 20s worrying. Did I still worry? Fuck yeah, obviously. Yeah. But like not to the extent where I was like burying myself on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no.
Yeah.
So I got to a point where I became, this is going to sound so narcissistic and like so terrible, but like I became who I wanted to be. I became the person that I needed when I was little.
That's
right?
fucking amazing. Yeah. No, it's not narcissistic. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Like that
feels good to be here now.
Yeah, 100%. And so I literally screenshotted with your phone posts of yours because we're using mine to record the video. And this ties in perfectly because this was the one post that I saw like literally last week or something where I was like, this is 100% what I'm going to ask her about.
Okay.
Literally says, I have become the person I always looked up to as a kid, and that might be my greatest accomplishment yet. I don't want what is expected of me. I don't care about societal norms. I could give two flying fucks about anything less than exactly what I want. Life is so much bigger than the white picket fence, and I wish we could see more narratives that reflect that experience. Be your fucking self. You're a goddamn badass. Live big, love extra fucking hard, and give grace to yourself accordingly. Stop complaining. Start doing shit you love. No excuses. And I read that and I was like, fuck, yes. Like, this is exactly what we need. And and I mean, like, there are, I don't know how many other people that, you know, don't see themselves when they're younger. Like, they don't see the person that they need or the person that they relate to. That's the whole like representation thing. And so they kind of feel like they have to become this for other people. And that's sort of what you're talking about here, which is incredible. So like, you know, tell me about that. Like, tell me about like this person that you're like, literally, I've become the person I always looked up to as a kid. What does that mean to you? Like, what does that look like? It's
a person that I needed probably when I was young, that, you know, I'm the goofy, weird person that like, I don't want to be like rigid and like do my 9-to-5 job. And then I get married and have kids and the white picket fence and the golden retriever. And then I don't want the simplicity. I need something different. I need something weird like me. I think, and I will say this, it's not a perfect practice. I don't feel like that every day. It takes time to like give yourself grace to also not feel like that on every single day. But I love who I am. Yeah. I
love who you are.
Thanks. I love what I get to do. I love just who I've become over the years. And I haven't been able to feel this way for my whole life. So when you get to a point where you're actually like, nah, I'm pretty cool. Like, that's a good feeling. Like, do I still worry? Do I still, you know, have those moments of like, is this too much? Is this too different? Of course, I'm a human. But then like right after those thoughts, the secondary thought is like, nah, you're fucking sick. Like, don't worry about it.
No, you're fucking sick.
But like, I want everyone to feel that way. Like, I wish everyone could feel that way. Yeah. And like, I actually have a podcast coming out tomorrow. It's called Choose Yourself. Like, choosing who you are, not just when it's like readily available, not when it's easy to be like, I'm sick, I'm cool, I love myself. Like, on the days where it's shitty and hard and you're crying and like life doesn't seem fair, you still pick yourself. You still give yourself the grace and being like, I still love myself even though I'm a really shitty day. I don't really like who I am. I don't like who I see in the mirror, but like, that's okay. There's something on the other side of it. And it's just like, I've gotten really good at working with my demons. Yeah. And that's the place where like I feel very proud. Yeah. Very proud, as it doesn't take me as long to like work through my shit.
Well, so that was going to be my next question in terms of like, okay, you know, being that person or being able to say like, I'm fucking sick, like, or I love myself on those days where maybe you had a to-do list that's like 9 or 10 things long and you did 0 of them and still being like, I fucking love myself. Like, this is, it's not the best day, but like, I love who I am in it, and that's okay. Like, it's okay not to get anything done. How does somebody get to that point? Because I mean, you've alluded to like, it's working with your demons and now you can work through them more quickly, efficiently than you did before.
Yeah.
But like for anybody listening, how does somebody take a step towards that?
Like the actual actionable task, right? Like that's the fucking $1 million question. And you know why? Because it's not the same for everyone.
Yeah.
So for me to sit here and be like, this is what I did, and I'll tell you what I did, and I posted about it recently, today is going to be a good day. I fucking say that shit to myself every morning. And like, granted, I, missed a couple days, but like, it's like fake. People are going to hate me for saying this. But it's like taken a different way. It's like fake it till you make it. I felt really fucking sad and call it depressed, call it anxious for a really long time. But I still told myself there was an opportunity for the day to be good. And even if the day was shit and I was still depressed and still sad, at least I knew that I tried.
Yeah.
And then the trying over a period of time, we've talked about this probably in the past on our podcast many moons ago. You rewire your brain to look for the good in life, and it becomes easier. Yes. And it's like actually a physicality. My action for my experience was call it a fucking affirmation, call it an intention, call it whatever the fuck you want, whatever word sits well with you, because there's a lot of trendy words, whatever. Whether you're saying it to yourself in your head or outwardly in the mirror or not looking at yourself,
or
whatever you want to do.
Like Bart Simpson.
Exactly. Yes, like a chalkboard. So good. That was a huge conscious decision that I made every morning.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe it for a long time. I didn't believe I was really true. I was just saying it and being like, to be honest, I probably heard it from a podcast. I honestly don't even know where I got that from.
It's okay. Yeah.
Probably a podcast. But it did help me immensely. And it doesn't have to be today's going to be a good day, whatever like your words are, whatever feels good to you, because I have also looked at other people with their affirmations. I'm like, that doesn't feel right to me.
And that's fantastic that you bring that up. And I love that you kind of prefaced your response with that, because there's a lot of people sometimes that'll be like, I'm successful in every word and this is what I did, so you need to do it. And it's like, wait, what? Like
no.
Everybody's so different. We're so different and unique and have different experiences and under different circumstances. My brain is different than yours. The experiences that I've gone through are different. So like my entire perspective is different. And so what works for you might not work for me. So if I started that, it may or may not work for me.
May not work for you.
And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that you're like, I'm not going to be this like, here is the example.
I ain't your guru, I ain't your teacher, I ain't your anything. I'm just me, and you can take my experience however which way you may need it. Maybe you don't need it at all. Maybe you need to learn that's exactly what you don't want to do, and that's fine too, right? Like there's just that in between. But the biggest thing in my experience over time, that conscious change has been rewiring your brain to believe that there is good in the world, that there is. And even on the days you don't believe it, at least you tried to believe it. At least you made the effort to be like, and it's so easy. It's so easy to think about one sentence. Like,
it takes you like 7 seconds to say,
right? Like it's
maybe less.
Maybe
it
less.
might be 7 syllables.
And all the other things that come with it, exercise, going to therapy, like all these things come and build up to doing those other things. But I would never have started therapy. I would never gotten to the gym. I wouldn't have ever done this, that, or the other had I not. You have to start from the foundation, right? You don't just get to like build a mansion. Like you just have to like.
Well, you can, but it'll fall
apart, or like no one wants to live there with you.
The wind blows, or no one wants to live there with you.
You're just there alone, and you're still sad. No, you have to like start from the foundation.
No, that's great. I love that, and like that little tiny change that was one sentence eventually sort of got momentum building. And again, you said you didn't necessarily believe it right when it started, right? But you said it over and over and over again, and slowly sort of rewired your brain, which is a real thing. You can
that is a real thing.
Rewire your brain. I've mentioned this a lot lately, so I don't want to like really get into it.
That's good though. That's good.
I don't know if are you been a big Netflix person?
Yeah, it depends on what you're watching. But I watch a lot of really like comedy because I just want my brain to shut off.
I don't know if you're into like documentaries and stuff, but there's one on it's called Human: The World Within.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Episode 2, it talks about the brain and how you can literally restructure it. It's a term called
neuroplasticity.
There it is. What's up?
It was on the tip of my tongue, and I was like, I don't know if this is the right term. I think it's the right term. It is the right term.
Yeah. So your brain literally changes based on what you do each and every day, and you can. This is it. It shares. It talks about like basically the foundation of structurally changing your brain and changing your habits.
I need to watch it.
Which is it's super empowering. Like, it's not like this, like, oh, I'm a neuroscientist now. It's literally the most empowering thing, because you're like, wow, my literal, like, the actions that I take today can potentially change the way that my brain is structured. Like, muscle memory.
Yep.
It's because your brain structure is like, you do it 1,000 times. So the structure, I'm getting into it when I said I wasn't going to. I love this stuff. I really love this
and
stuff.
I remember on our podcast, something that stuck with me that you said and has stuck with me for a long time, which I also apply on the regular, is about the logical brain versus the emotional brain.
Nice. Tell me
and
more.
Like, I am a super emotional person, and I used to feel, and I used to say to myself, wiring my brain to believe I can't control my emotions. Like, this is who I am. But it was hindering me in relationships. It was hindering me in life, that I couldn't control, how I felt. And then realizing, and I had the same conversation or a similar conversation with Dr. DiNardo after our interview, and we were talking about the same thing about, like, and I do this now when I'm really emotional. I'm like, okay, I can register. I know my emotional brain is fucking lit up right now. I need to switch over to my logical brain. And that's when I click on a podcast about science, about astrology, about anything, to pull my brain to a section or to an area where I can, like, logically process something.
I love that.
But, like, being aware of that is so helpful. So helpful. There's another like tactile skill to have, of, like, just registering that there are two different processes going on. And figuring out what works for you to get to the part where you can, like, logically work through whatever your shit is, and not just, like, function off of emotion. Which
super
is
cool.
great sometimes, but not always.
I was really excited when you said something stuck with me from your podcast. I was like, ooh.
It did. I think about that all the time.
We talked for, I don't know, an hour plus. I'm like, whoa, what is it? What is it?
Yeah.
But that's super important.
It is.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
I know.
Been through we've been
so much.
We've been through a lot. We have. And I mean, like I said, I love doing this, because even though I've known you for, I mean, it's only been 4 years. But, like, very early on, like, we got into the podcast, got into some, like, in-depth conversations and stuff like that. And, I feel like I know a decent amount about you, but there's so much that I don't know. And I mean, of course, like any person, like you only know a certain amount. But so this has been great, and I love doing it love doing the podcast, because I learned something new about whoever I'm interviewing, no matter if I've known them for like 40. I just 40
years?
I meant 14.
How old are you, sir?
14. Whether I've known them for 14 years or 14 months.
Yeah.
So I learn something new every time. Yeah. I do want to ask you one last question, but before I do that, I want to kind of give you the space. Is there anything that we haven't touched upon, anything in your, like, process or being your authentic self that you're like, I definitely want to, like, share this with somebody?
We talked about a lot of good shit. We talked about a lot of good shit. And I said it already about failure. I think failure is the greatest thing, is something we don't have to be afraid of. Again, still a process that I work through all the time. But something that my dad told me, said to me on the regular, that I was always so frustrated with, but now is like, makes so much sense. He's like, so what? So what if you fail? Like, he gave me so much freedom, and I know not everyone has that support system. A lot of people feel a lot of pressure from their parents. And my dad was just always the person that's like, so what? Go try again. Go fucking do something else then. And I'm like, oh, okay. Or like, when I want to shoot photography, I always was like, oh, I need like a certification. He's like, no, just go do it. Like, I love that. So what?
Get out of your own way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's dope.
So that's like, those are another like, thing on repeat on my mind when I'm like, oh, I can't do this thing, or like, oh, I fucked up this thing, or I failed, and you feel bad about it. It's like, so what?
Yeah.
Also, no one else gives a shit.
Yeah.
We all think that everyone is worried about our own shit. This is going to sound so rude, but it's so true. No one gives a shit what you're doing. I said that to Kirsten the other day, and she's like, I need this on a button on repeat. I'm like, we think that everyone is like so hyper-focused
or paying attention to everything what we're doing. And they're like, no, they have their lives.
They're thinking the same thing about their lives.
Even people that I follow all the time, like you on social media, like there are times where I'm like, oh my God, I haven't looked at a post in like 3 weeks or a month or longer.
Exactly.
Because, hey, I have a life to live.
Exactly.
Like, it just doesn't happen sometimes. No. And it's not because I don't, like, you're an awesome person to follow. We're great friends.
But you just have a life.
Exactly.
Wow. Weird. Yeah. I think we just put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and I just want to be like, so what? Nope. Fuck it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Nope. Cut that, like, that thought process off. It's like putting a stop sign up, like when you're about to spiral.
Yeah.
And like, fuck it, man.
It reminds me of a video that I saw of Sarah Blakely. She's the CEO of Spanx.
Spanx. Okay.
Yeah. She said that her dad, like growing up, so her and her, I think she has a younger brother. She has a brother. And so her dad was literally trying to create an environment where failure was okay. And if at the end of any school week, if they didn't have anything, like if Sarah and her brother didn't have anything that they failed at,
Yeah.
Their dad would be upset. They'd be like, then you weren't trying. Then you weren't trying. Then you weren't getting out of your comfort zone. Then you weren't, being, ambitious or whatever the word is, right? You weren't trying to do, something that you can't do. So like literally every day or every week he'd say, all right, what did you fail at this week? All right. And eventually, like Sarah and her brother were like, oh my God, Dad, I tried this musical instrument and I sucked at it. And he's like,
that is what we need.
I love it.
That is what we need. I fucking love that.
Yeah.
If I don't want children, but like my nieces and nephews, that's what they're going to get from me is like, go fucking fail at something. Please, dear God, go fail at something.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Whoever's listening, that thing you want to do, go fucking fail at it. And then you'll try again and you'll be better the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. This, what we've just talked about here may or may not be your answer to the last question on the podcast. But if you've got another one, great. If you've already touched on something, you can elaborate on it, or we can just leave it where it's at.
Okay, last question.
So, last question is, what advice do you have for somebody who wants more out of life? Whether it is somebody who, might have been in a position like me or you at one point where they're like in their deepest, darkest moment and have no idea what their next step is, or somebody who's like, I'm living a good life, but I want more. I want the next step. I'm not exactly where I'm at.
Yeah, I definitely did just answer that for sure. Failure.
Okay,
my mind just goes to failure. But it's also like my life motto is like, fuck it. And again,
my life motto is fuck it.
Absolutely.
Tell me more.
Who cares? Like, life is so fucking short. Like, there's so many things to do, and we get so caught up in feeling uncomfortable, discomfort, that we don't do the thing. Speaking from experience, like I do the same thing, right? Like I get held back from things that I want to do all the time. But then you get like 20 seconds of courage and you're just like, fuck it. Let's just go do it. Let's just go do this thing.
You're the second person in the last 3 weeks that said like, be courageous for 20 seconds and it can change your life.
That's how I went to therapy. I wanted to go to therapist. I won't rant, but like, it was like 3 years. I had this picture of this therapist in my phone. I saved it off of like Psychologist Today. She was someone locally. And I was too scared to go for so long. And I was laying in bed one day because I always feel like I get kind of like it's cyclical, right? Like depression doesn't really just go away forever. Yeah. Like it can kind of come and go depending on everyone's situation's different. And I would get like to a really dark place and then I'd be like, I can fix this. This is fine. Then get on the other side of it and be like, yeah, I don't need therapy. But it was a moment where I was actually quite comfortable and I was quite okay. And I was like, you just have to send the email. Just send the email. You don't have to like sign up. You don't have to do the consult. Just send the email.
This is so interesting.
20 seconds. I was like, blah, blah, blah. I just want to get some information about going to therapy with you. You sent the email.
This is so weird. I had like literally the same experience.
Did you?
Yeah. And I talked about it in the solo episode.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention. Maybe I missed something.
No, it's interesting. I never framed it as like my 20 seconds of courage type of thing. But now that I'm like thinking about it and you're mentioning therapy specifically, I was like, holy shit, this was kind of the same thing. And maybe it was like 2 little spurts of 20 seconds of courage. Because there was one part of it where I was like walking down to school or walking to my class the day before.
Yes. Oh, you went to the door and they weren't there.
Yeah. The day before I had been like, man, fuck this. Everything is like worthless. Fuck this. Like I'm in a shitty spot. The next day I was walking down the same path and I was like, no. Like I need to figure this out for me. I need to like really take a step forward. I don't know how to do it. So I'm going to go see one of the school counselors because we have them and I have access to them.
Yep.
So that was like my 20 seconds of courage of like saying to myself, being vulnerable and being like, I am in this spot and I need to move forward. I don't know how to do that. I need help.
Yep.
And that was my 20 seconds of courage.
Yes.
But then went up to the therapist's office, knocked on the door. Nobody was there. Literally walked away from the office. I took like 40 steps and was like stopped dead in my tracks. I'm like, Adam, you know you need this. You're taking the easy way out right now. You need to like actually physically turn around, go grab a business card and send them an email.
Yes.
And so that was my 20 seconds of like,
Nope.
turn around. You need this. You know you need this. Go actually do it because you're the only person who can help yourself right now.
That is it. That's my, there
So
will
that's
be
wild.
my, that's very, yeah. You are the only person in charge of you.
Yeah.
Like, I think I also spent a lot of my 20s feeling like I need to be saved. Like I was waiting for someone to save me. I was waiting for, again, no one really, I guess, in specific, but like waiting for help. Maybe that's where it is. It's waiting for help. And you get to a point, you have to realize like you're in charge of your own life. You're in charge of taking care of yourself. No one else is. And that's kind of like a blunt, hard truth that I think I had a really hard time with for a long period of time. But if I can say that to someone, what advice would I would give to someone, depending on where they're at in their life, because that's really hard to hear when you're in the depths of your darkness. You are the only fucking person that is going to take care of you. And like, again, while that's very hard to hear, once you realize that, you can then lean on other people for that help. But like, no one is going to push you to go to therapy necessarily. It's not their job, is what I should say. It's your job to get yourself there.
Yeah,
it is your job to make the little baby step.
Yeah.
You don't have to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
You don't have to fucking go to therapy, go to the gym, start your affirmations, do all the things all at once. That's so intimidating.
Yeah, it is.
Just do the one thing, and it's your job to do the one thing.
Yeah, I love that. And when you say, you're the only person that's going to take care of you, that doesn't mean that you need to have all the answers or be like the person, like the therapist and the personal trainer and everything. You can leverage the relationships that you have with other people or create new ones.
Yeah, but you have to realize your worth of taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's like you are worth the time to go seek therapy, to go out to dinner with friends, to, feel like part of a community.
Yeah.
You take care of you, you start to love you, and you can find all these outlets that will help you, change you, grow you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely can be some hard thing to hear when you're in your darkest moment. Very much so. When it clicks, if you're in the right moment at the right time and you hear the right message, it'll click and you'll realize how empowering that statement really is. And you'll understand that I can take control and I can take an intentional first step to set off like the 7-syllable or whatever one sentence, like today's going to be a good day to put you in the right direction. Yeah.
And it's like, I feel, giving advice to like in general is very hard because to give what I just said for someone listening who's really not in a place to hear that, please know that I love you and you're safe and you're fine. And like that advice might not be for you. And it's okay if you don't fucking want to take my advice or that hurt too much. Like that's also okay. It's hard to give advice across the board depending on where your mental state is at. That's something that's like I take into account when I post on Lemon Soul, is that this isn't for everyone. The advice I might give today might not be for you. But again, recognize that like that's also okay. Like you're also doing just fine.
Yeah.
Like, and if that advice doesn't hit you right, that advice wasn't for you. Find the advice that does. And like, learn yourself, teeter on where you want to push yourself and where you want to be like, you know what, that wasn't necessarily for me. But maybe there's someone else out there listening that going, fuck yeah, I do need to do that. And they get motivated by it. So, right. So, that's again comes back to, as the consumer, whatever you listen to, whether it's a podcast or on social media, wherever, like you're in charge of how that absorbs within you.
Love that.
Yeah.
Mic fucking drop.
It would be good because it's just on a couch.
It would be good. It would be good. I'm going to... Oh, did I just touch a button?
No, you're good.
I don't know. I'm going to move this over and give you a hug.
Yes, Dad! Oh, so good to see you.
Oh, this was amazing.
Oh, so good. We could chat literally for hours.
We could, but we should stop it there.
We should. We definitely should. We don't want to drag it on too long.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
In my own home.
Yeah, right? It's so cool. Such a cool experience.
That's good.
And I really appreciate your honesty and vulnerability. Thanks, and man. Being your own fucking superhero.
Yeah, I try sometimes. Thanks for coming home and hanging out with me. Makes me happy.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Alrighty.
Boom.
All set.
Bam. Fucking nailed it. Nailed it. Now we have another match. There we go.
thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it and that it inspired you on your journey to living your best life. Now make sure to check out the show notes below for a rundown of today's show with all the important links, such as where to find the guest online and important resources that they may have mentioned. Also make sure to share this episode with a friend or family member and subscribe so you get the notifications when new episodes are released. I absolutely love hearing feedback from you guys, so I encourage you to share a review on the platform you're listening on and let me know what your biggest takeaway was from today's episode. Now it's time to go out and build the life of your dreams one step at a time. And remember, the only way to be comfortable is to be uncomfortable first.